Hey, it's time to make some crazy podcasts. Are you ready? Here we go. It's Tom Matt Attack. You were not expecting a Crazy Taxi introduction.
No, I thought you were Macho Man Randy Savage for a second.
Oh yeah, I can do that as well. God, I'm gonna have to edit the levels on this. You're right, Tom Parry.
I'm absolutely fine. Yeah, very organised today. Cup of tea and straight into it.
Yeah, well, as is the case, as people who follow me on Twitter and all that jazz will know, and regulars to the podcast, I was in Japan, and it was actually my fiance, his birthday yesterday, and we were going to do some Japanese food for ourselves, and then that kind of fell through because she had food poisoning, and so now today is the day that we're making a ton of Japanese food and having some people over to eat it with us, yourself included, of course. So, yeah, the schedule is literally me going, right, I need to cook a curry, I need to make some gyoza, I need to do this, I need to do that, and so regimented, Parry.
Very good. Yeah, I've had to be
try.
a bit regimented today. You know, there's always a few things to do for me on a Sunday. I had a very lazy Saturday, to be honest with you.
Slightly,
nice.
slightly lazy Saturday. Nothing too full on, to be honest.
Yeah.
What were you up to? Just lounging around playing some video games?
Nah, I'm a little. I Skyped my mother.
Yeah. Okay, fair enough.
You know what? It's funny, isn't it? When someone asks you what you did, and you had a day like that, you can't never remember.
Yeah. I went for a wander in the morning, played some Pokemon Go, which I will talk about in a minute.
Yeah.
Then, pretty much looked around for some Japanese ingredients and then did some prep work in the evening. So
I did play a game. I played Castlevania Mirror of Fate HD for a bit in the morning.
Okay.
I like that. It's good.
Mirror of Fate.
Yeah, it's developed by Mercury Steam, who are doing the Metroid.
Is that the 3DS game that they then ported?
It was a 3DS game, and then they ported it to the big consoles.
The big consoles.
As
Yeah.
I like to call
consoles.
them. Yeah, and it's a really fun game. And I think what made me pick that up again is knowing that it was developed by Mercury Steam, and it's a similar Metroid type experience. I was curious to see, what it was like.
Yeah.
I've had it for a while. I played it a little bit. And it's, really good. Really nice ideas, really well done. Great music. I have to say the soundtrack on that is fantastic. And if they, I guess, with the new Metroid, they're using the original soundtrack and redoing it slightly.
I guess so.
So, if the same guys are responsible for the new soundtrack, redoing it, then it should be cool. It's very orchestral, the Castlevania.
It's a Spanish developer, right?
I don't even know where they're from, actually.
I'm pretty sure they're based in Europe.
But super. I really enjoyed it so far. It's quite accessible. It's not too maze-like yet, at least.
Okay.
There's a little bit of backtracking. There's certain areas you can't get to unless you go an item Metroid style. But so far, that's not really hindered my progression. Just to the boss fight, which was pretty good.
Yeah.
I'd recommend checking it out if you can find it for cheaper, either on 3DS or PlayStation, Xbox.
See, it's interesting to hear you say that, because every podcast I've listened to over the last week since that Metroid announcement has gone, oh my god, their Castlevania game is terrible, they're going to ruin Metroid, rah, 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 rah.
Well, I see.
So,
I like it. I think it's a good game.
Okay.
I think maybe those people who are critiquing that Castlevania game harshly are the ones who are really big Castlevania fans. And I don't really count myself in that area, but I appreciate Castlevania. I think this is definitely more accessible Castlevania than some of the tougher ones.
Yeah.
Really well-made game, really enjoying it.
I'd like to give it a go. I'm curious after so many people have slagged it off, and I'm just like,
I don't see what there is to slag off. To be honest, I really struggling to kind of. It's not terribly difficult. Maybe that's it. Maybe people just want something really, really hard. There is a reasonable challenge, at least in the boss I did.
I think there's
maybe
expectations.
I'm just crap at video games.
I don't know, man. Like I think when I think of portable Castlevania titles, there is a very high bar.
Well, it has a heritage, doesn't it?
Yeah, I mean...
And I haven't played any portable Castlevania titles. The only Castlevanias I've played are Castlevania 3, and that one on the PSP.
Yeah. Which
was a remake of a
PS1 game.
No,
it was Dracula X, right?
Dracula X.
It's the PC Engine game.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That was pretty good. But yes, I haven't played Symphony of the Night, so
No.
I cannot comment on that.
Okay.
Because that, I think, is the game that a lot of Castlevanias are judged by. But you're talking specifically handheld ones.
Yeah.
Like the Game Boy Advance ones.
Yes.
Like Harmony of Dysentery.
Yes, Harmony of Dysentery. I think you'll find it's Harmony of Dissonance. No, I mean, to be honest with you, there's kind of a branching path in Castlevania development. Obviously, Symphony of the Night came out for the PlayStation 1 and was then, okay, cool, we're making Symphony of the Night. And then the series kind of went off and split into like an action-adventure type thing, where it was mostly turned into like a brawler, like Castlevania 64 and then Circle of the Moon.
Yeah.
And then some of the later ones on the PS2 and Xbox, I can't remember the names of them because they're not very good.
I never played those ones.
Are essentially third-person action brawlers.
I played Judgment on the Wii.
Yeah? The fighting game.
Yeah.
Is that any good?
Yeah, it's all right.
Oh, fair enough.
Yeah.
But the portable ones, starting with Circle of the Moon, then you had Harmony Dissonance, Year of Sorrow, and then there's a few other ones on the DS that I can never remember the
there
name
being
of.
a lot of them.
They are very much cut from the cloth of Symphony of the Night.
Yes, I thought.
And I think that's the expectation is
Yeah.
that they would be very deep, very story-driven RPG experiences.
Yeah.
Within this Metroid-style world.
One isn't.
And that's probably it.
I'd say it's somewhere between the Metroidvania style and the old Castlevania style because it's not so confusing as to many branching paths and such. As I said, there's not a lot of backtracking, only if you need to get certain items. There are some story elements there. I forget who you're playing. You're an ancestor of one of the other characters, and you're Scottish.
Okay.
Yeah.
There is some
You're
British
a Belmont.
heritage. Yeah.
I think you're a Belmont.
I think you're a Belmont, yeah.
Yeah.
Is it a prequel? It's a prequel to the Big Boy console Castlevania game, right?
It's like an ancestor a few down the line getting revenge for something that happened to another ancestor.
Okay.
I can't remember now. There is a story at the beginning, but I started it ages ago. So
I never beat the 360 Castlevania game. It was a bit too God of War-y for me.
That sounds interesting to me. That
it's not what I look for in a Castlevania game.
Like Ghost Rider.
Like Ghost Rider.
PS2.
Yeah, that quality title.
So yeah, I actually found myself enjoying that, playing it for a good while yesterday morning.
Yeah.
But I didn't expect to. I just turned on my PS3. I think it was on YouTube for a bit, and I was like, well, PS3's on. Maybe I should play a game. Went on my list of games. It was the first one on it. I thought, oh, that one will do.
Yeah.
But then in hindsight, I think it was something to do with that Metroid game coming out and me just subconsciously connecting the two.
Okay. Fair enough.
What about you, Matthew? Have you been playing anything?
I've been playing a few things.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously, it's technically been 2 weeks since we've properly podcast.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
With the E3 podcast in between. So, true to my word, I finished Yakuza 2. And all I can say is, wow, it's even better than the first game. Improves a lot in terms of... I really like the story of the first game. I think it's very much making you feel like a badass and progressively building up Kazuma, as he's referred to, but is in the Japanese translation, it's always Kiryu, because they call him by his surname.
I remember you saying, yeah.
And I will refer to him as Kiryu, because I'm currently playing a Japanese game, as well they call him the entire bloody way through.
You're playing a Japanese game. So that, to me, that's firstly the most interesting thing about this.
I know, but I'll talk about it in a minute, because it brings up some interesting discussions. So, Yakuza 2, solid game. Definitely builds upon the first one in very interesting ways.
Give me ratings. First one, what out of 10?
First one, I would give a 9. I would give this a 9.5. I really like
You're
these
holding
games.
out that 10.
I'm holding out that 10 because I don't think it's a perfect experience. It's one of those games where I've played a lot of now, and even playing this new one, the Japanese one that I'll talk about in a second. the fighting in those games is inconsequential to my enjoyment of them. The fighting is just so I'm doing something between story beats.
Right, yeah.
And so, as you mentioned, rightly so, on the last time we were actually talking about this, the fighting is not the best part of those games by a long shot.
You should play, what was it? Urban Reign on the PS2 if you want some of that full 3D fighting.
But I mean, that's not what they're going for. I mean, neither is the open world, which was brandished about any time anyone would talk to me about Yakuza of, wow, it's like Grand Theft Auto, it's in a big open world. And
it's not that open, is it? It's like Shenmue.
Yes, it is very much like Shenmue. There's a scene and you can interact with a lot of people and do different things within that, depending on where you are in the story. But it isn't a sandbox, which was the biggest obstacle for me when that game came out, just because it was marketed like GTA, and I was like, well, I'm immediately not interested in that. Which is a shame, because I genuinely think I would have loved this game back then as much as I do now. But 2 is very interesting. I won't go too much into it because I talked about it in depth, but the story is incredible. I think the characters are very memorable. It's got some twists and some turns in it that, to me, like I said, rank it amongst some of the best Japanese storytelling of movies and things for me in this kind of Yakuza pseudo-crime drama thing. It reminds me very much of a Takeshi Kitano movie, and I'm very glad that he's in 6.
Yeah, that's great. I'm a fan of his movies, and he has made a lot of Yakuza films, so it only seems appropriate that he's in the new Yakuza game.
Yeah, he is. Yeah, it's cool. But yeah, so after beating that, I was just like, well, do I go on to do Yakuza 3? Or do I play one of the games I bought from Japan, which is called Ryoga Gotaku Kenzan?
Very nice.
It's a game that was often mistaken for Yakuza 3, and I remember seeing it back in the day when the PS3 was first coming out and going, wow, that game looks incredible. And it's set in historic Japan, and you're playing a character that ends up calling himself Kazuma Kiryu, but he isn't. That is actually his undercover name, because his name is actually Miyamoto Murasashi, who is actually a very famous samurai from Japan. He is regarded as the greatest samurai who ever actually lived.
To Yakuza, I'm wondering.
Well, to be honest with you, I think it's just them looking at the game and remembering what I know of seeing Yakuza 3. I think they were trying to make a small, compact story that wasn't a proper Yakuza game, in inverted commas.
Yeah.
That they could then build their tech around and experiment with the PS3 hardware.
But I imagine the themes of this game are somewhat different, are they not?
They are extremely different. Well, I mean, no, actually...
Because you're not
yes and
part
no.
of you're not a Yakuza member.
You're not a Yakuza.
You're a famous samurai.
You are a famous samurai. But it's essentially the start of the game is you are... Oh, God, I wish I could remember the term of this. Essentially, you are a guy who a brothel hires to make sure that people pay the brothel and that everyone in this town of Gion... Yeah, kind of. Yeah. But you're not so much that, because you just kind of chill out, and then it's, if they have trouble, you're more of a security guard for them, but you also collect money for the brothel.
Yeah.
And so you go about your day, and at the start, it's pretty much like, oh, I'm going to wander around this town, I'm going to collect money, I'm going to make sure everything's okay, and generally it builds up the tutorial of like, hey, this is how you buy things, this is how you do this is how you do that. And... at the end of it, there are a few characters that have carried over from Yakuza and make cameos. The first one you meet is Haruka, who is the girl that you are looking after in the first Yakuza game.
Oh, okay.
She comes to you and she essentially says, hey, I hear that if I give... I was told to come see you by a man with a scar on his chest. He told me that you could help me with Miyamoto Musashi. I would like you to kill him. Which is interesting, because you are Miyamoto Musashi, and you're like, what the fuck?
Kill me.
But it turns out that while you are Murasashi, you are living in hiding. That's why everyone's referring to you as Kiryu. It's because this is the name you made up for yourself. So the second chapter then is essentially you seeing what happened, and essentially it tells the story roughly of what happened to Murasashi, and you were called up to help defend the north of Japan against the south of Japan, and you go to war, and essentially you set up. You were told, hey, there's a really dangerous emperor dude here. You need to go and kill him for us. He's going to betray our army, and we're all going to lose this war because of it. Yeah. And so you go there with Majima, who is a reoccurring Yakuza character. In the version you've played of Yakuza 1, Tom, he is the guy with the eye patch voiced by Mark Hamill.
Yeah.
He's a bit nuts. Mm-hmm. But in this game, he's very straight-laced and very like, I'm the toughest bastard around, the same way he is in the other games, but he doesn't seem as cuckoo as he usually does. And I was like, oh, that's an interesting choice. They've made him like a badass, but they've made him kind of equal with Kiryu. That's interesting. So you go to this thing, you kill this guy, you realize, oh shit, actually, this is the successor to this army. And you go to this temple where you're supposed to go, and you're like, oh god, why was he trying to betray the thing? And then they try and kill you. So actually, you've just assassinated a political rival for this dude.
Yeah.
And you escape, you manage to get out of it, because they establish earlier on when you first meet Kiryu that he's like a sword master, and he's from this, it builds upon the Japanese mythology that he's from no school, he trained himself, blah, 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 blah. And the guy you're fighting is like, oh, well, it's not true that people don't fight with two swords, because there's a short sword and a long sword, and depending on close combat or long-range combat, you use that. And the guy's like, oh, well, there's very talented swordsmen out there that can use two swords. Surprise, surprise! He can use two swords. Yeah. And everyone's like, what the fuck? Because you fight off all these blokes with two swords. So yeah, swords are a main part of combat in this. And actually playing this sword combat in here, I'm like, okay, they've started to build upon the basic engine that they set out in Yakuza 1 and 2. You can fight with a regular longsword the same way you would. It doesn't degrade. It is a permanent item, and you can buy more from blacksmiths. You can fight with the two swords, which is better for lots of enemies and doesn't hit as hard as using one. And then eventually you get a great sword, which is massive, chunky, and slow, but it can also block shots from people using oldie-timey rifles at you. So, yeah, betrayed, blah, blah, blah. Majima sacrifices himself to save you, and then it goes back to present day. And you say to this girl, like, no, I'm not going to do this, because essentially you don't want to get involved because you realise you've got all this criminal past and there's all this baggage with it. And you tell this girl no. And essentially she's like, oh, well, then I'm going to sell myself to this brothel so you have money to do this. Bear in mind, this girl's like 12, maybe, at the most. And so it's like, what the fuck? Like, this was a thing back then? And, like, the opening of the game is kind of sketchy because it looks like they've brought all these children to sell to this brothel. And I'm like, okay, I understand why this isn't localized. Despite the core of this story being super interesting with all the Musashi stuff, there are some questionable things around it. And it led me to think, I was like, well, if this was in a movie...
yeah, it'd be fine.
It would have been fine.
It would have got released.
It would have got released. And I'm like, well...
was there more stuff to do with Japanese culture, which is just a little incomprehensible to a Western audience?
Not really.
They could have localized it and it still made sense.
Not that I've seen, to be honest. I mean, there's a lot of focus on honor. There's a lot of focus on, like, some of the historical aspects of things and, like, town names being the same. And
is this game being remade at all?
It is not,
for the PS4? No. It's kind of...
And then Ishin, the latest one, also has no signs of being localized, though the games aren't related. Like, Ishin is just them setting a Yakuza game in that timeline, because the Yakuza exist even back then.
Yeah, okay.
And you fight some Yakuza people from
you seem to have picked this up rather well. Was there a language barrier for you? I imagine there'd be some sort of...
So, like I've said in the podcast before, I started learning hiragana. I've since moved on to katakana, which is... hiragana is the basis of the Japanese syllabary. It's all of the sounds that you use in Japanese. So it makes up the core of what you're saying. It's 46 characters, I think, that you need to learn. And then there is the katakana, which is essentially they use it for scientific terms, italics. So in writing, you see it a lot because they're making an emphasis of a character saying something in a particular way.
It sounds complicated.
And for when you are using words that don't exist in Japanese, you will use katakana to say, hey, this is this. And there's loads of other, like, depending on the size of the letter, it mutates the word and all of this other stuff. So it is really complicated, and it is something I'm slowly learning. So for me, actually, playing through Kenzan is quite interesting because I'm practicing my hiragana and my katakana because I'm reading the subtitles. What I'm essentially doing is I'm playing through the game, a chapter at a time. Once I beat a chapter, fortunately, there's an amazing resource out there called KHH Subs. And what they've done is they've played through the entire game, they have a video walkthrough, and they've translated all the text.
Wow.
But to be honest, I'm quite surprised of how much I've been able to pick up with how emotive the facial expressions and the visual storytelling that's going on in the game.
Yeah.
So it's been like, okay, I have a rough idea of what's going on here, and obviously the games are very much in cutscenes, and you know, when someone pushes themselves in front of you to die, you're like, oh shit, that person sacrificed themselves for me. But more accessible, for example, the one I tried to play Final Fantasy V in Japanese way back when.
Yeah.
You know, like the language.
You've not got that. Oh gosh, I've lost the word now. Like you were saying, that sort of visual cue, because of course the characters are animated in the same way; they're not as expressive.
No, exactly.
You don't have the body language to pick up on.
Exactly, and obviously there's not really cutscenes in those old games. It is literally text.
You've got characters sitting there, occasionally maybe making an expression or a...
Yeah, and obviously there's voice acting as well, so you know, someone, if Kiryu's eyes squint and then he says something very seriously, which he often tends to do, you're like, oh shit, it's about to go down.
Okay. Well, it's a very interesting exercise, very interesting experience.
Yeah, it's kind of cool, to be honest. Like I'm saying, I'm really enjoying the game, but it is work. It does feel like sometimes that I play through an hour-long chapter slower than I probably would if it was an English game, because I'm making I'm reading the hiragana and the katakana aloud to myself.
Yeah.
And so generally my practice would be like to, na, do, kanji, katakana, I can't remember, no, and just doing this and just getting used to saying the sounds and recognizing the things that are there.
Yeah.
Obviously, like, I'm so early into learning Japanese that I have no idea of sentence structure. I don't really know that many words. Though it has been kind of cool because I've learned hiragana and katakana enough now that I can use the Apple keyboard. So what I've been doing is when I see a sentence that's just a string of hiragana, I'm then translating that. And then it'll be like, what? And I'm like, oh God, why are there so many kana to say what? But that's besides the point.
Whoa. And you think you're going to keep this up? Finish the game?
How
long is it?
I'm over halfway through the game. Like, it's not that much longer.
Because you mentioned it's a bit of a side story, maybe a shorter game than some other... Yakuza's not a series known for very long games.
Hey man, Yakuza 5 is like 60 hours long.
Oh, is it?
Yeah, Yakuza
I was
5
under
is
the
a super long
impression
game.
they were usually a little shorter experiences.
I think Yakuza 1 was around, I think all in all about 16 hours. Yakuza 2 was a bit longer. I think I almost beat it in 20.
Oh, wow.
This one, according to howlongtobeat.com, which is always my reference where I'm like, should I play this game or this game first? It seems like it's about 14 hours. Yakuza 3 seems like it's a little bit longer, but not as long as the second one. So.
Wow. I saw a review of Zero, and it said, it's a shorter game than most.
Yeah.
You know, but I guess the review's idea of a short game is something like 16 hours, isn't it? Whereas for me, a short game is 4 hours.
Yeah,
or
exactly.
Something like that, 4 or 6 hours, something like that.
I actually, I picked up Beyond Good and Evil for the PS2 because I have it on Xbox, but I was like, I'll get it on the PS2. I've got it out at the moment. I'm playing through Yakuza. I'll play it through on the original hardware. And I've seen a lot of complaints of like, oh, well, Beyond Good and Evil is a good game in the wake of E3, but it's really short. I'm like, no, it's like fucking 12 hours. What are we talking about?
It frustrates me that, because not every gamer feels like that about the length of video games. In fact, you know, maybe these critiques come from people who have all day to play video games. It's got to be, hasn't it? I've been wondering this for a while.
Yeah.
You know, normal people with a job, other, responsibilities.
Yeah.
can't play games all the time.
No, and I mean, if you do, like when I went down my Persona rabbit hole on my Final Fantasy, it has implications on other things, and then you can't do anything else. So, it's all about balance. That's kind of the interesting thing with this at the moment is I feel like I'm practicing stuff that I would otherwise be practicing.
Because sometimes when you play a video game, you feel like, well, that was fun, but was it the best use of my time?
Yeah.
You have that quandary that's, just how it is.
Yeah.
So yeah, this is good if you're getting something more out of it. You're learning something from playing the game, which is, I think, rather cool.
It's really nice.
Yeah.
It's also got a feature, actually, because it is set in, like, ancient Japan, like 1600s. There are kanji, which is the main of the Japanese language, that aren't used anymore. So it actually has a feature where sometimes you will see kanji highlighted in green, and if you press the triangle button, it then not only tells you how to pronounce that kanji, but it says, like, this is what this kanji means. This is why it doesn't exist anymore, because it was replaced by this one and whatever. So I was like, oh, wow, that's a really cool feature. So I'm actually looking forward to playing through this game again when I'm a bit further down the Japanese rabbit hole, and then going, okay, that's really cool. Like, that this kanji superseded this one. I'm already seeing it with, like, hiragana. That table used to be a lot longer, but through necessity of the language developing and through people going, okay, actually, no, we don't need two things that sound like E and Ri. We can make that by combining these other hiragana. There's no point of us learning like 70 of these things. Yeah, super cool. But I'm enjoying it. It's got a very good story. If you don't want to play through it the same way I am, like I said,
you can watch it.
khsubs.com has the full playthrough of this. They did a translation of Yakuza 0 before that came out, and they're working on Ishin at the moment, which is going to be great for me, because by the time I beat 5 and get onto Ishin, hopefully it'll be done. But
you're showing no signs of tiring from playing Yakuza games yet. Because my experience with Tomb Raider, right? I'm trying to complete that Tomb Raider game. Still haven't done it yet. I don't want to play the next Tomb Raider game right after.
I really, really like Yakuza.
Yeah, well, that's good. I'm glad.
The stories are the thing. Like, I talked about with Persona 5, maybe I wasn't going to really rush into another JRPG again, and that feeling being amplified by playing I Am Setsuna of, hey, maybe these stories aren't the most interesting stories. Yeah. But I think the stories that are being told in Yakuza are very much, like I said, of a high-quality Takeshi Kitano. Yeah.
Takeshi Kitano.
Why can I not say Takeshi Kitano? Of a Takeshi Kitano movie. And for me, that's just like, okay, cool. This is a really interesting plot. It's got lots of twists and turns. It's very serious. But it almost feels like a series because you've been told this thing over like 20 hours. Yeah.
It's funny that he's in a video game, knowing how he feels about video games, and he doesn't like them.
Yeah.
And now he's in it. And I wonder if he's interested in the story of Yakuza, because, despite it being a video game, it's still a story which could be interesting for someone who doesn't even play the games. So I wonder how much he got into that, or if he had any creative inputs, because his films at least could have been inspiration in part for
I assume they were, you know what I mean?
Yakuza.
Like, watching some of those movies with you, and the names escape me, but like, the character that Takeshi Kitano often plays feels very much to me like Kiryu. He is a very serious guy. He isn't as thick-set as Kiryu is. But
not open with his emotions.
No. But, he has got very deep emotions. What was that movie we watched where he was pretty much taking his wife on a trip? Like, that's a beautiful movie.
Yeah.
And that side of him is also reflected in Kiryu.
It's through his actions more than it is what he says or his face. It's more what he does that implies how he cares. Yeah,
and that for me is pretty much the cornerstone basis of Kazuma Kiryu.
Well, there's probably some interviews out there with Kitano in regards to Yakuza 6, perhaps.
Probably.
Might be worth checking out.
Be interesting to read. Yeah. What have you been playing, Tom?
Yeah, I've played a few other things. I was away in the Czech Republic last weekend for a wedding. Beautiful place. I'd recommend a trip there. Very nice. I was in the car for quite a long time, so I played a little bit on my 3DS. Tetris, of course, is still in there, and I play it quite regularly, but I don't need to talk about Tetris. Other than Tetris Ultimate, is it? No, I can't remember what it's called. The one on the 3DS.
Yeah.
It's developed by Hudson, and it's got loads of great modes. It's similar to Tetris Party Deluxe on the Wii. It's got a lot of modes and a lot of fun, different variations on Tetris in.
Yeah.
And it's got a fun presentation. That's nice. So if you compare it to maybe Tetris Ultimate and the PS4, it is a little bit more bland and sterile. At least when Hudson are in charge, they kind of make it a bit more fun. You got your Mii's on the bottom screen dancing as you play, things like that. You can dress up your Mii, and I like that. It's very Japanese in that respect. I've also played a little bit more of Yoshi's New Island, and I find that an endlessly playable game. I find that it's not too taxing. When you want to play a game that's just a little bit more straightforward. I tried playing Zelda. What's it called? Link Between Worlds for a bit.
Yeah.
I didn't know where I was going or what I was doing, so I quickly turned it off. I mean, it wouldn't have taken a lot, I'm sure, but I couldn't see it very well either in the sun at the time, and I was like, okay, I'll just leave that. I'll just play something I know
Fair
better.
enough.
And I ended up playing Yoshi, and that's a great game, I think. I can't remember it getting the greatest praise when it came out.
No, because I think it's very much cut from that cloth. I think people wanted it to do something a bit newer, but it's definitely Yoshi's Island.
It's the sequel to Yoshi's Island. It's the last part of the Yoshi's Island trilogy, I guess, if you don't count story.
Yeah.
Which it was a little different, but still similar, I guess.
Yeah.
Really great game. Recommend it. Yeah, if you like Kirby and things like that, that's straightforward and fun. And beautiful music, great visuals, nice ideas. Fun Nintendo stuff.
What's not to like?
What more do I say about that one? I've been playing a few N64 games as well.
Saw your Parry's pickups video.
Yeah, unfortunately I couldn't record the footage, so unless you're familiar with the games already, you won't know what they look like. But out of those games I played, I really liked Aerofighter's Assault.
Yeah.
And Bomberman, I could see the appeal of Bomberman 64.
I played that game so much. Bomberman 64 for me at the time was amazing.
But I was saying in the video, I don't think that's accessible. If you were a kid and you got given that, it's not as accessible as Mario 64.
We figured it out.
Yeah, I mean, that's good, but I think as a kid I would have been a little bit more frustrated with it.
We just played it 4 players.
You're not the story? Or
I don't even think I ever touched the story of that game. We just used to play it multiplayer.
Because I think the multiplayer in that is somewhat different to regular Bomberman multiplayer.
It is.
And I thought if you don't know the controls that you learn in the story mode, then that could be quite...
We picked them up pretty fast, to be honest.
Yeah, kick bombs, pick up bombs, charge up bombs, which is something I'm not familiar with.
Yeah.
What else can you do? In the story mode, you have to use time bombs at sometimes to let them off in the air as you throw them.
Yeah.
And then what else you got? You got little chasms which you've got to can only traverse if you place a bomb there to walk over because you can't jump, of course.
Yeah.
It's a bit more cerebral than it's not really a platformer as such. It's more of a puzzle. Well, how do I get to that switch or do that?
It adds a lot of depth to it.
It
man.
does.
Like,
I think it's a very unique game.
being able to throw bombs at people from halfway across the map and timing it perfectly and killing them in multiplayer is the most satisfying feeling.
Yeah, because there's something to how far you throw the bombs, isn't there?
Yeah.
How much you push the stick depends on how far you throw the bomb.
Yeah. And then, when you die, you tomahawk someone with your rumble pack. That's how it works.
I think, it's a unique game, and I think there's some fun to be had with that. Aerofighter's Assault was a fun game, which I used to play as a kid and didn't really like it. Now I don't see why I didn't like it. Maybe it's because it's typical of that genre that you have to spend a bit of time flying around to shoot down the enemies. But it's actually not that hard. It's very arcadey and less simulation-like. But as I play these games, in general, I just started thinking about those video games I played at that time, the N64 era of video games. And of course, video games have evolved since then. But for me, that's some period I'm very nostalgic about. The kind of games that came out then, for me, are what I think of when I think of video games.
Yeah.
Games felt like games. And that's not to say games now aren't games. It's just they have evolved so much. There are a lot of games nowadays which are very cinematic and, very like a blockbuster movie, and they're fantastic games. But I think as the same way people are nostalgic about certain eras of movies, I think it's possible to be nostalgic about certain times in gaming because it was quite different back in that age. You didn't have all the cinematics or all the technology that they have now to make these incredible visceral experiences. It was a little bit more about, you'd see the same kind of music same sort of visual, same sort of music. You know, you had a lot of these staples. Aero Fighter Assault has a great soundtrack, very of its time, you know. And it just all feels like you're in an arcade.
Yeah.
And I think that arcade style, that feel, is sort of lost now. I mean, Sega were huge. And the Dreamcast is probably the best example of a machine that just oozes being in an arcade. A lot of the games for that console just feel like arcade games, because a lot of them are.
Yeah.
And that's a period in games I really like, when that was the template.
I think the PS1 and the N64 were kind of the last bastions of pure gameplay. Use air quotes.
Well, I think the Dreamcast can be counted in there as well.
I think there's a lot of... Yeah, I think the Dreamcast is kind of the last whiff of it, though. I mean, the PS2 also has this good balance of cinematic things like Yakuza.
Yeah. But as the PS2 came, you got a more and more thing. I mean, the Wii, I did something to bring back a bit more of that accessible arcade-like gameplay, and maybe that's why it was so popular at the time. Yeah,
but I mean, it was only so popular because it was like, hey, we can pick up and play Wii Bowling. Like, a lot of those other games that tried to do that weren't as good, or
but then
half-assed
there were quite
games.
A lot of arcade ports to it as well, which was quite nice. Some of the Sega light gun shooters, like Ghost Squad and House of the Dead, and they kind of had a resurgence on the Wii, at least. And now, you know, when you look at like the E3 presentations and such, Sony's, for example, as we touched on, it was all about those heavy hitters, those huge adventure games. And I was looking at my collection of games at the minute and how many of these adventure games I've got, and I have to say to myself now, I'm not going to play. I can't buy any more games like that, because I haven't done Nier, I haven't done Yakuza 0. There's plenty, Tomb Raider. Yeah. You know, those are going to have to not get any more of them. I know what it is that I play more often, and that's, I'm looking forward to new Micro Machines. I'm looking forward to new Everybody's Golf. It's got to be those pick up and play accessible titles. Tekken 7.
You not picked up Tekken 7
I've got
yet?
Tekken 7, but unfortunately, I accidentally delivered it to my parents' house and not Claire's, because my girlfriend Claire was coming over recently, and I was hoping that maybe she could bring it, but I accidentally ordered it to my parents' house, so I don't get it until July.
Wah, wah, wah.
So no, I haven't played Tekken 7 yet.
That's a shame. I hear it's very good.
That's just my little thoughts upon how gaming has changed over the years, and in the same way, nostalgic for film of an era, you can be nostalgic for games. I think a lot of people are very nostalgic for that retro NES time. Yeah. You know, because I didn't grow up with NES, I grew up with N64, then that's maybe... I mean, Master System, yes, but there was a peak time for me in gaming when I really fell in love with the pastime.
That's fair. I mean, I have that experience on different consoles, to be honest. Like, the NES for me is about determination. A lot of those games, you talked about this before, it is about dying. It is about then replaying and keep replaying until you die. Yeah. And it is something that
Mega Man teaches that, doesn't it?
I have nostalgia for, but at the same time, doing videos for Biographic, nothing infuriates me more than getting about halfway through a game, dying through something that wasn't my fault, and having to restart the game.
Well, saving really wasn't a thing back then.
No.
It came in, but it was all about, you got to get the most value out of this as possible. You can't be able to complete it in... Although, you know, take games like Kirby for the Game Boy. I mean, there were games that were a little bit more accessible. I
mean, a lot of games still had continues and stuff. I think coming off of the Commodore and coming off of the Amiga and Spectrum and these kind of things, very early games were based on the arcade logic of, well, we should punish you when you die, so you give us more money. Yeah. And it's just all about respect of a player's time. Like, when I was a kid, I could put several hours into figuring out that I'm supposed to accidentally kill myself lots on Gremlins 2 because you need to get hurt to walk through a thing of barbed wire, and it doesn't really make any sense, but that's the way the game's designed. And now I look at it and I'm like, why have I got to do this? If I get to this section, I don't have enough health to walk through here, I die, and then I need to restart the entire bloody game again. It's frustrating. It completely... they were trying new things, I get that. But at the same time, it's just not an enjoyable experience when you're looking at it, especially if you're looking at it critically. Especially if you're looking at it through the eyes of, if I was a 5-6-year-old and I'd been bought this game for Christmas, it's probably the only game I could play for the next year.
Yeah.
Would I have a good time with this? Probably not. I would have probably played it to death because that's all I had, but I wouldn't have enjoyed it.
Yeah. I really enjoyed playing the Master System as a kid. That was my first console. But I can't say I ever finished any of them apart from Sonic. I think there are a couple of games I could finish, like Sonic Chaos and the original Sonic the Hedgehog on Master System. But there are other ones where, I never finished them. I think it was partly to do with time as well. You couldn't save in these games. There were no passwords, I don't think. Wonder Boy Monster Land is it's a big game.
Yeah.
And I could never be able to finish that in one sitting. I never got that much time. That's funny saying that about being a kid. Maybe it was more frustration. I don't know that I finished earlier. There's a part in Monsterland where you have to answer questions.
Yeah.
You know this.
Yeah,
don't you?
yeah.
You get them wrong, it's game over. I think maybe now I'd be able to do it, but as a kid, it was like it felt very frustrating.
It's the thing in a lot of games, man. Like I was playing Maru's Mission. And there's a boss, there's a Sphinx, and asks you questions.
Wow, that's the same.
Yeah,
it's a Sphinx boss in
and it's like, if you don't answer these questions right, then you die.
I can never remember if they're the same every time, because I kept dying. I think they changed them ever so often. It's a little bit like Alex Kidd. There's meant to be a set path for them, rock, paper, scissors things.
Yeah.
But, having to look that up
is ridiculous.
It's ridiculous. I just try and play it as I would, and then you just die, and then you think,
yeah,
you should be able to play it without knowing the sequence.
But
games were different.
Back then, games were different. They were trying new things. They were still trying to figure out how to do it.
And the N64 came along,
and then changed everything.
No, I think there were a lot of other consoles and factors involved, other than the N64. But
yeah. Speaking of arcades and Dreamcasts, I've been playing a bit of Crazy Taxi Gazillionaire. Hence the introduction to this podcast.
Yeah. Was there another game like this a while ago using the Crazy Taxi
There was
license?
a Crazy Taxi game.
Fair Wars? No, that's a handheld one, isn't it?
I can't remember the blinking name of it. There was definitely another mobile Crazy Taxi game. I remember playing it, and I thought it was all right. But it was one of those games I played for a little bit and then deleted.
Because this isn't Crazy Taxi as you would remember it, is it?
No, it isn't. It isn't your grandma's Crazy Taxi. This is an idle clicker, and is the first idle clicker
I hate that
I've ever played.
Idle clicker.
It's the other game is called City Rush.
Right, and that's similar, is it?
No, it's I think it's like a runner, but with driving the car, so you're dodging things and doing whatever. Tom's just picked up a fidget spinner that I bought for my cat and is amusing himself.
Where did you buy it from?
I bought it from a local supermarket that starts with a F and ends with a text. And it was only 30 krona. And at the time, they were actually still allowed to call it a fidget spinner. I've noticed recently every shop in Denmark is selling these things. And they don't call them fidget spinners anymore because the company who made the fidget spinner originally is, I think, in the process of suing the ass off of anyone who's calling their unofficial fidget spinner as a fidget spinner. So that, Tom Parry, is a finger spinner. See, they just changed the first word and then it's all right legally. So everywhere's calling them finger spinners.
Oh, what am I doing?
Yeah, put it down. See, it's addictive. It's just, it passes the time in the same way that an idle clicker might, Tom Parry. So while you spin that around, I would be tapping away on my Crazy Taxi. So, essentially, this game is an idle clicker. For those of you who don't know what that is, essentially the gameplay boils down to you tapping on a screen repeatedly. It is something you do when you have 5 minutes to kill. It is something where you're like, oh, well, cool, I'm between meetings.
There's a few of these.
I'm on the bathroom.
Simpsons Tapped Out, is it called?
Yes.
Is that what it's called?
Yes.
And then there's a Family Guy one. My girlfriend's played a couple of these. She plays the Star Trek one at the moment.
Yeah.
Which seems similar.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So essentially, I can boil down my gameplay experience of Crazy Taxi to I click on the screen a couple of times, the numbers go up, I watch an advert, the numbers go up some more. For example, I just watched an advert, and then I doubled my money, so I now just earned $1.509 trillion.
From watching adverts.
From watching an advert, and then that money goes in. And then I go, okay, cool, well, I can buy this new car now. Isn't that nice? I will buy this car. This is this person's favourite taxi, which means I get more money. I hold the button down, upgrade the car, and then the money in the top left corner goes up, and it keeps going up as I hold it down, and it's great. And then when I haven't got any more money, and when I want to tap some more stuff that I can't tap, I can go to this world map, and then I can tap on fares, and then my taxis
So it
will...
is the same principle as a fidget spinner, sort of. It's an idle tapper.
It is literally something you just do when, instead of browsing up and down Facebook.
And you're okay with that?
I'm okay with that, and I'll tell you for why,
because
Tom Harry.
You get to it's a point where if you become a little bit obsessed with it and start spending money.
No, that has not happened.
No.
I have no interest in spending money on Crazy Taxi Gazillionaire.
That's where it gets a little bit weird for me.
Yeah. Well, to be honest with you, the only reason I downloaded it in the first place was, look at that, I could double that again, but I'm not going to. The only reason I downloaded it was because I heard good things about it, and I heard that their monetization was perhaps not the best because it's very easy to not buy things. Yeah, I could buy some diamonds, but all I can really do with those is buy scratch cards, and I will have a random chance.
Gambling, that's what it is.
Yeah, pretty much. Being able to upgrade my driver or unlocking new drivers.
Which you can do anyway.
Yeah, you can do anyway. The drivers are the thing. I have 44 out of 60 of the drivers in this game. And once I get all the drivers, I'll probably delete it because then for me there's no point. They've all got wacky personalities and they've all got very current things. Well,
they were one of the most enjoyable things about Crazy Taxi, weren't they? The characters.
Yeah.
Of course the core gameplay, but I always liked seeing those characters.
And that's the thing here that's kind of nice. They do have a prestige thing, which is called selling out, which, as you pointed out, is probably correct for the Crazy Taxi license in this use in this game. But, you get little fun dialogue options and stuff once you've sold out, and sometimes your cabbies will tell you things. Yeah. It's actually all right. To be honest with you, I never saw the appeal in clickers. I was just idle tappers and clickers and everything like that.
I like the presentation of that, though.
Yeah.
I like looking at it. If you want to look at it, it's nice illustrations. It's similar to that one, that Star Trek one that I mentioned, because the illustration of the characters are really good. You get different versions of the characters. Yeah. Like evil Spock and things like that. And you collect the characters, and then you send them on missions, and then you get more things back from missions that you can invest in more characters. And
exactly, and that's the loop here. Yeah. It also helps, Tom Harry, that they licensed The Offspring.
Oh, so it plays.
If I were to turn on the sound of this, it should go into a song that you will be quite familiar with.
Yeah. No, not that one.
As well as doubling up. I apologise for how loud that probably is. So go over here. It's not playing. No.
Oh.
Usually
does it only play occasionally.
I think it plays when you collect a pickup. So I will keep tapping away, and when The Offspring is about to play, I will lift it up again.
Okay, because that's part of the Crazy Taxi experience, isn't it?
It is, and when you hit a power up thing, and then it just suddenly goes, yeah. I'm there going,
fills you with joy,
even though I'm mostly playing this game on silent.
If it makes you happy and doesn't stop you from doing anything more important,
well, no, this
then
is
I
the
think
thing.
It's quite all right to have these little things like fidget spinners or whatever. I think it's fine because people really frown upon things like this, don't they? I've seen
some articles for fidget spinners, and for those of you who don't know, fidget spinners are actually a thing.
For those who don't know,
no. But I'm saying beyond.
Oh no, they're a thing.
You having a fidget spinner.
They're like therapy, aren't they?
It's for kids with ADHD.
Yeah.
It's kids with attention problems. It's so that they can spin these things, and then they'll concentrate on what's being said in classrooms. They're actually a really good thing. They serve a purpose. But much like yo-yos or much like Powerballs or any of these other crazy fad things that are really easy to make and manufacture, it kind of just took off. I guess it became cool for these kids who were in classrooms to have these things and be twirling them like ninja stars while they were talking to people. And it does feel nice when you have the resistance against your finger.
You got a grey one. Because it matches your shirt or your sweater or whatever.
I'm actually accessorising. I have several fidget spinners for every day of the week. No, I don't. But yeah, it's pretty cool. I liked it.
Yeah, and it's interesting how these things become a craze. How did it begin? How was it popularized more? Because as you said, this was a little device, little toy, if you need to have something to fiddle with.
Yeah.
And then what was it? One day, some other kid without ADHD thought, I like that. That's fun.
Yeah, that's really cool. Wow.
And he got one.
Yeah. Exactly. and then it spread. Yeah.
That's probably what happened, wasn't it? It was a playground
Undoubtedly, you know, like mini boglins or whatever we used to buy when we were kids, Monster in a Pocket and all that jazz.
I like these little crazes.
Yeah, me too.
I think they're fun. I always find it fascinating how they people latch onto them.
Well, I've actually been categorizing my years in Denmark. Like 2 years ago when we moved to or 3 years ago was the year of frozen yogurt because we got frozen yogurt all the time because it finally came to Denmark. Last year was obviously the summer of Pokemon Go, which I played a little bit of yesterday.
They kind of done something to.
They have, yeah.
Renew interest.
They've brought raids into the game. I thought, wow, this would be really cool. Going out, talking with people, like big social gatherings, playing this thing. It's almost as if it's a bit year too late because nobody's actually playing around me.
So raids is like an event that happens, and it's like a one-off.
No, they're happening all the time.
But each event is individual. Like,
Is
there like
yeah.
a special? How does it work? Is there a special Pokemon that appears?
So essentially, what happens is around the area where you are. Where you can track your Pokemon in the bottom right corner, you can click that, and there's also an option for raids. It'll tell you if there's a raid in your area. Fortunately, we're in the middle of a city, so there's generally about 7 going on at all times. You have gyms around you, and they use the gyms for raids, and an egg will appear on top of the gym, and it'll have a countdown clock, and it'll say, in 2 hours, this raid will begin. Then the egg will hatch, it'll open, and then there'll be a Pokemon on it.
You don't know what it's going to be. This is how they're going to introduce these legendary Pokemon, isn't
It
it?
is, yeah.
We talked about this.
Yeah.
We coined this back on the podcast ages ago.
Yeah. It's almost as if someone at Niantic wasn't listening, and it was just a very easy idea.
Yeah,
to do.
one day they're all going to go for that egg, and it's going to be sudden Mewtwo or something, isn't it?
Yeah. So they've actually distinguished the eggs by color, which is kind of the equivalent of like how high a level you should be to catch these Pokemon. So there are pink eggs, which are 1 and 2, and then there are yellow eggs, which are 3 and 4. Apparently, people who've been data mining in the game, just showing Tom Parry now that there are eggs around, and then the eggs will have random things in them. There are also blue eggs, which haven't been put in the game yet, which are believed to be the legendaries because they are level 5. They haven't been put in yet. There's a Pokemon event. Oh, for example, there's a Venusaur currently on one of them.
Oh.
So if you didn't get some of the higher level Pokemon, like I saw an Alakazam earlier, and a Gengar, and a Magmar, and an Electabuzz, some of the rarer ones, then I think this is perhaps a good chance for you to go get those Pokemon.
And there'll be other people there as well.
Well, that's where it kind of all falls apart. So I went to a level 4 raid yesterday because I was like, oh man, there's this giant Electabuzz on top of the mall where there's generally, I can see people playing Pokemon Go anyway. This will be really cool to go here and to see these people and be a part of this thing.
Yeah.
And I went there and there was no one there. And it takes 2 minutes then of like once you use your raid ticket to go, cool, I'm going to participate in this raid. You get 1 free raid ticket a day.
Oh, right.
The others
you have to pay for.
You have to pay for. And so you go and do your free raid, and you stand there, and you wait 2 minutes for other people to come. And then you have 6 Pokemon to try and defeat this thing within 2 minutes. I did it pretty easy on my own with 1 Pokemon. And then, as a reward for that, depending on your input of how good you were in the raid, like which team you're on compared to who was doing the raid, how much damage you personally did, how fast you did it, you get these premium Pokeballs. And then essentially with these, however many premium Pokeballs you get, say I got 13 when I caught an Electabuzz yesterday, is how many Pokeballs you have to try and catch the Pokemon you took off the raid. So you have like 13 Pokeballs you can flow and try and catch this Pokemon. And if you don't do it, then you don't do it.
So you don't get the Pokemon.
So you don't get the Pokemon, but you do get items. You can get a rare candy, which literally trades 1 for 1 for any other candy
Shame
to level
guarantee
Pokemon.
You'll get the Pokemon.
No, it's a bit shit, especially since, generally speaking, if you're doing more than 1 raid a day, you're paying about 30 pence to do a raid, which, adds up eventually. I think, actually, no, it must be more than that. It must be about 50, 60 pence to do a raid, because I think 500 coins is around a $5. So yeah, it's probably closer to £1 to do a raid.
My gosh.
Which for me seems a bit high. Yes, you can do 1 free 1 a day, but then that means people aren't going to be actively participating in these raids because they're going to be waiting for good Pokemon to drop.
So has this done a lot for the game, do you think?
Because
I guess the intention of this is to get some interest back into it if it was waning slightly. They got to do these things, haven't they, every now and again, shake things up.
it got me to reopen the app for the first time in God knows how long, because I hadn't played Pokemon Go in about 6 months. And so I was like, okay, cool. It wasn't about 6 months.
No, it wasn't,
3 or 4.
because we did podcasts. Actually, time does fly.
It does. But I opened it, and I was like, okay, cool, I'll go and do these raids. There was no one there. I guess when Legendaries come into it, more people who are like myself I never got the original 151 will do it. And I've been opening the app to see if Chansey will spawn on any of these raids, because it's still the only original of the 150 that I can catch that I haven't got. I did get a Farfetch'd in Japan.
I hope you get a chance to catch it.
Oh, God, I want to hurt you. Stop playing with the fidget spinner. Stop fidgeting. Yeah, so I don't really think it's going to be the breath of fresh air that Niantic perhaps
you're
hopes
playing
it
with
would
it.
be. Yeah, exactly. It's my fidget spinner, though. But we'll see how it goes. To me, I think this game is dead. I think they're just kind of treading water with it. Millions of people still play it, though. That's the thing.
Just, they've got so many Pokemon they can keep introducing into it.
Yeah, but it doesn't do anything new. It's just like a gym battle, but the Pokemon's more powerful. And the thing is, like, this Pokemon could have like 20,000 CP, and so you burn through a lot of your Pokemon and potions and stuff trying to beat it.
Yeah.
And then it just levels down to a regular one anyway. If it was like the chance of, wow, you need to be in raids to get this crazy powerful Pokemon.
It's not as powerful when you get it.
No, it's not as powerful. It's like
they've been possessed.
A good egg-hatched Pokemon, because they tend to be of a higher IV. So it goes. Sorry for anyone with no interest in Pokemon Go. Got a bit deep. Yeah.
That's fine. I think it's very current. It's very, very interesting to hear.
Yeah.
I don't play it,
No.
but it's interesting.
You been playing anything else?
I haven't been playing anything else, really. No.
Been picking up any N64 games towards your complete collection?
I've been picking up one N64 game, but it's mostly been Tetris games.
Interesting.
It's the new thing. Because of my newfound love for Tetris. It's been reawakened, and I picked up Magical Tetris Challenge.
For the Game Boy Color?
For the N64.
Oh, okay. It's also on the Game Boy Color.
And
the one with Mickey
and Donald and the Disney crew. Tetris Plus for the PS1.
Yeah.
Tetris 4D for the Dreamcast.
Interesting.
I hope it's in 4D. That was a Japanese-only release. There is, was it called the Next Tetris that was released in PAL Dreamcast?
Yeah.
There's also one on the original Xbox. No, the Xbox 360 called Tetris Evolutions.
I think Tetris has been released on absolutely every platform.
What's interesting is the Japanese Tetris Grandmaster game.
Yeah.
For the Xbox 360. Apparently, it's like tournament proper Tetris.
Yeah.
And I'd really like to get that, although you can only get it on Japanese Xbox 360.
Did you not?
It doesn't play.
Have you not bought
regular.
Tetris Gaiden for the Super Nintendo yet? Which is the best.
Which is the battling one.
Yes, which is the best iteration of Tetris.
If you're into battling,
it is the most fun version of Tetris.
Yeah. It looks fun. I haven't got it yet. I do have Tetris S for the Saturn, which is I think it was released as something else. I think it's Tetris Plus basically.
Yeah.
But the Japanese version called Tetris S.
Yeah.
I also just picked up Puyo Puyo 4 for the Dreamcast.
Okay.
Because it was very cheap.
Yeah. Puyo Puyo games tend to be.
In downloads, I downloaded the original Metroid as it was on sale.
Yeah.
On the Wii U. Sun and the Moon, which is a puzzle game.
Yes, you told me about
Majesty's Spiffing,
yeah,
which is a game you picked up not so long ago.
Not very good.
All these were on offer in some sort of Microsoft, what is it, like deep cut sale.
Okay.
They're saying these games are great, but you might not have heard of them. Aqua Kitty UDX, which I'd heard some good things about.
That name rings a bell.
Yeah, it's an older game, but it was quite popular at one point. And Chariot, because I always thought that game looked interesting. It's the one where you two people have to work together to move this thing.
Okay,
is it
good
a deceased
description.
King? You've got the you help the character. It's like a coffin, and you've got to use both people to make sure you can get it to the objectives successfully without dropping it. Something like that. It looked pretty fun. I like the style of it. So those are all really cheap. I don't tend to pick up downloadable titles unless they're really cheap.
Yeah.
So a couple of quid here and there. And the Tetris games I think were fairly inexpensive. Also, But yeah, I am bidding on that Japanese Tetris game, but it does involve me getting a Japanese Xbox, which
Yeah, actually, it probably would. I was going to say, I wonder if there will be a Japanese Xbox is not cheap. You realise this, right?
there's one starting bid £55.
I did not see any Xboxes the entire time I was in Japan.
So I saw on eBay there's a lot of listings and they're really quite expensive. This one, no one's bid on it. 55 quid. I'm hoping I'll be able to swoop in and grab it.
I'm sure you can probably just get your Xbox modded.
Yes, you probably can. I think Martin Fink's got a modded Xbox, actually.
I think you should just talk to our good friend Martin Fink then, because I'm sure he probably won't want it.
As long as you just don't go online with it, I think you're fine.
Well, I mean, I think that's okay. Actually, is it a 360 this is for? Yeah. It might be region free.
No, I've checked. The game's not region free.
No, Xbox 360, actually, I saw more of those than I saw original Xboxes.
Yeah, not original Xbox. That was Tetris Evolutions for the original Xbox.
You should just get a chipped Xbox 360, I think, is probably the safest bet there. It's probably a lot cheaper.
It's good. I haven't bid on it yet. I bid on the game, though. It was 1 penny.
You know why those Xboxes are expensive, right? Cave shooters.
Yeah, people want them.
People want them for shmups because there were a load of games published by the developer Cave in Japan only, and they are not region free.
People love shoot 'em ups.
And people love shmups. I was hoping to pick up a few of those games. The name escapes me. Oh god damn it!
Shooty spaceships.
No, there's one particular series I like. It's called Princess something or other, where everything's bug based. I can't remember the name of it.
Oh yeah, I know the one. You played it on your tablet.
Yes, I played it a lot on my tablet. Yeah. And it was very expensive in Japan, even for. It was comparable with a brand new game, if not more. And I was you're good. I can pick up Game Boy games for under £1. Okay. So
you recommend I get that Tetris then for the Super Nintendo?
I love Battle. Tetris Gaiden is
There's also
fantastic.
Tetris 2 with Bomb Bliss, which is a variation on Tetris. Don't know how familiar you are with that.
Yeah.
There seems to be two versions of that, which is confusing me slightly because they're both called the same thing, but there's two versions of it.
Yeah.
Which contains original Tetris and this add-on.
Hey man, there's a Game Boy game that I can't remember the name of. That's essentially like a puzzle game, and there are 20 different versions of it, and it's called the same thing. So if you search for it, you literally just have to pick it out by label color.
Yeah.
Yeah, Japanese game iterations are a fun thing.
I think this Bomb Bliss thing outside of Japan, it's like Tetris something. There's a variation, Tetris
Blast.
It's
Could
Tetris be
Blast, yeah, because it's also on the Game Boy.
Yeah. And then there are other variations on Tetris. There's Tetris. What's Tetris 2?
Tetris 2 is
it's
Tetris
just Tetris,
2.
regular Tetris, isn't it? Even on the Game Boy, it's still just regular Tetris.
I believe it does some different things, but I think it's just like Tetris XD, essentially. DX, even. It does some things with the formula, and I think there's different modes.
Tetris Attack is something else, isn't it?
Tetris Attack is...
It's like Pokemon Puzzle League.
Yes, it is. It's a different game. I can't remember the name of the game. Yeah. It's just they stuck Tetris on it. They also put Yoshi on it in the West, because why not?
Did you know there's a Pokemon Tetris game? It's only for the Pokemon mini console.
Yes, I did know this.
It's fairly obscure.
Yes, that console only has about 5 games, and I believe that is the most expensive of them.
I can find it for about 35.
Yeah, it's not bad. But I mean, it's still 35 quid for essentially a 1-bit video game experience. It's probably not worth getting.
Is it in colour?
No, it's black and white.
Black and white. Wow.
Yeah. I mean, you should concentrate on your N64 full set before you start
I played one called Tetraminos.
Yeah.
Or Tetramom. What do you call them?
Tetrominos.
Tetrominos, that's right. And that is, I don't know how it managed to have gotten a release, because it is Tetris, but just under a different name.
Because those shapes are shapes. Like, Tetrominos existed before Tetris.
Yeah. But the gameplay concept is the same.
What's that for?
PSP, also play on Vita, of course. And there's a new version for PS4 as well.
Yeah. It probably does something different.
I wanted a Vita version of Tetris, also PSP version. So it was like £2 or something.
It's all right.
It's one of the minis, the PlayStation minis. Do you know something about the PSP, actually? I discovered that if you've got like a modern router, you want to connect PSP online, something about it's only takes WPA as opposed to the latest version of internet security.
Okay. Yeah.
So if you try and connect, it will say not recognized. You have to actually go into your admin setup on your computer and change your security level because the PSP is so old now that it won't work with new security.
That's a shame.
Or you can just plug your PSP into your PS3
and
download the thing to PS3 and then copy it, which is what I did.
Yeah.
But I just thought it was a fun fact.
Interesting.
If you're struggling with that, that's what you have to do. You have to go into this website. The website I had to go to, it's the same for everyone, I think.
Yeah.
It's just a list of numbers.
Yeah.
And if you go on it, you'll get to your admin for your internet provider. But you have to type in like a username and password, and God knows what that is.
Yeah.
So,
Fun and games.
Fun and games. Fun and games, which is exactly what we've been talking about on Tom Attack.
Indeed. And now is the episode title. Have fun with that thumbnail. Cool. If you've enjoyed this podcast, you can find us in a variety of places. You can go to blastprocess.com. You can also go to their YouTube channel where this podcast now also lives. You can go to tomamattack.com/podcast. You can also go to iTunes. While you're there, why not give us a cheeky rate and subscribe? Let us know you're listening, etc., etc., etc. We're also on Facebook at facebook.com/tomamattack and on Twitter at TMAcast.
Did you see the latest image I did for the video version of podcast 163? It was your leaky light fitting.
It was my leaky light fitting with a obscure...
I'd like to apologise now for the terrible quality of that image.
Yeah, what's up with that?
It's just, it was quite a small picture and I scaled it up. It was from your Twitter. And then I had to edit it slightly because it was very hard to cut out.
Yes, I saw that.
And then it's horrible if you're watching on a big screen.
Yes.
But I also added some water droplets I was quite happy with.
They didn't look too bad.
They looked natural, didn't they?
Did you put a filter over that image?
I desaturated the image.
Yeah.
So I could get it in line with the drips a bit better.
Yeah. That's fair.
There you go. So
could have asked me. You could have got a high quality photograph and then not had to deal with any of this.
But it looks odd anyway. But in fact, when you listen to that podcast and you explain about that light fitting and you see that image, it becomes a lot more apparent what we're talking about.
Cool and gang.
So I think it's helpful.
So for the 6 people who've currently
viewed
that podcast
on YouTube. It's a horrible image, and if you prefer a picture of Mario, then you'll get one on the next podcast for the E3 one, which the video will be up very soon for that one.
Okay, cool and gang. Taxi the Cat's just come in, so it is officially time for me to start cooking. So let's get cracking, John Barry. Until next week, everybody, be sure to game on.
Game on.